So people say to me, I thought you would have been supporting reform. And yeah, I agree. The Tories have been absolutely useless. Labour will be horrendous if they get in, which they probably will, but we hope not for too long. I'm not even going to talk about the Liberal Democrats. And then we've got Reform UK. Now, there's a lot of things I don't like about Reform UK, and get it off my chest, here we are. Doesn't mean to say I don't respect you if you're going to vote for them, but these are the reasons that I'm not. First of all, Tice, Bull and even Nigel Farage pushed the jib-jab.
Yep. And we're talking about, say, 65 million people in the country, so we're talking about 130 million doses. We have more than that. Moderna's coming online, and on top of that will be other vaccines. So, look, the UK's in a great position. And the other thing is about caregivers. They really must be vaccinated, because otherwise they're putting elderly and vulnerable people at risk.
Well, it's absolutely critical to their job, surely. I mean,
it is.
I don't see how they can do the job if they're not prepared to be vaccinated.
And of course, you see in the UK, we don't believe in compulsory vaccination. Now, you can argue whether that's the right or wrong thing, but the one thing I will tell you is there's no way you're travelling abroad without a vaccine, because the airlines are going to demand it, and so are other countries.
But there are many jobs where actually a certain level of training or ability is required to do the job. And surely, if you're going to be a care worker, then you must be vaccinated in order to protect the residents.
Yeah. Hey, Oxley, Member of Parliament for Ashfield and Eastwood. Just finished a shift at the vaccination centre. Now, when I first started here in, I think it was January, beginning of January, we were doing about 300 to 400 a day vaccinations. Today, we've done over 1,000 at the Ashfield Health Village. So that's a phenomenal effort. So a big well done to all the staff and the volunteers at the Ashfield Health Village.
I shocked many of you, particularly those who've been my supporters for years, by saying that I thought perhaps Tony Blair had a role. But whatever you think of Blair's misdeeds, when he says he's going to do something, he actually goes and does it. And the reason that I picked up on Blair was I saw him last week talking about the vaccine, talking about the rollout, with more knowledge than anybody in government. It was he that started the argument saying, rather than vaccinating people twice, 3 weeks apart, wouldn't it make more sense to vaccinate double the number of people, and perhaps taking some of the bureaucracy out, maybe even more than double the number of people, so that they've got a high level of immunity, even if it's not the highest that could be achieved? And that argument that we should give one dose to as many people as we possibly can in short order, that argument that Blair put forward last week has worked, because the government have changed tack. Well, today, Blair was on Good Morning Britain with Piers and Susanna, and once again showed that he understands how vaccinations work. He makes the point, all the primary schools are closed. Why not open them up as vaccination centres? He makes the point, on polling day, we get 30 million people going through those centres.
I would actually have mobile facilities as well, going round place by place. You could use polling stations. I mean, remember, we managed on election day to get, 30 million people?
Yeah, well, we had this conversation
through
yesterday.
the doors voting.
So why can't we have a big, rapid vaccination programme? He makes the point.
There was no scientific data. An awful lot of scientists were saying, look, this mRNA, including the guy, Dr. Robert Malone, who invented the technology, the mRNA technology, they were saying, no, it's not been tested enough. But forget that. Let's say we had the most tested, the most brilliant gene technology there's ever been. It was a disease that was only dangerous to a very, very, very small percentage of the population. And I personally believe in full bodily autonomy. I think as a human being, I should be allowed to choose what goes into my body and when. I'll evaluate the risk. My risk at that particular occasion was that Pfizer, the second most heavily fined pharmaceutical company after GlaxoSmithKline in history, with $3,000 million fines in total, I didn't trust them. That was my decision. So when I see Tice and Bull saying, no, mandatory vaccines for health workers, and when I see Nigel Farage wanting to get Tony Blair, war criminal Tony Blair, involved as the Tsar for mandatory vaccination. No, thank you. My days with reform were over then and there. Oh, we got Lee Anderson now. Yeah, Lee Anderson was exactly the same. He was promoting the jib jab. So then I think to myself, well, let's have a look at the party. Maybe the members will uprise. Because I know a lot of you guys who are reform, a lot of guys and girls, sorry, who are reform supporters, you're for full bodily autonomy. So I thought, well, perhaps all the members will vote. The members can't vote with reform because there are no members. There's just supporters with no voting rights. So it's down to Tice, Bull, presumably Farage and a couple of others, maybe Ben Habib, to make sure that all the policies are in place and no one else has got a say. And I think to myself, for a party that opposed the globalist, the undemocratic European Union, that's a bit strange. And I want my party to be open to the members. So that's another reason. Not being funny, do I really want 3 or 4 guys who got it totally wrong over COVID? Fair enough, they might have changed their mind or apologised. Now so much evidence has been smacked straight in their faces. But will I really just trust 3 or 4 guys where the members of a party haven't got voting rights to use their common sense, use their mental acumen to come to decisions on my behalf after seeing that during COVID? No way, Jose. If there is eventually a link between these vaccines and the turbo cancers and the myocarditis that we're seeing in a lot of excess deaths, if there is a link, those guys are just as guilty as Pfizer and Moderna themselves, as far as I'm concerned, and everyone else like them. Every other politician, every celebrity, everyone who polled on with no evidence. Because if a muggins like me, an absolute thicko from a council estate in London, can see we should look at all the evidence before we start pumping stuff into people's arms, then I expect that as a bare minimum from the people who represent me and who I've voted for. They're a no-no from me for that reason alone. I've got to be able to trust the judgment of the people that I'm voting for a start. I don't trust their reasoning and I don't trust their mental capabilities to reason. I'll be honest. I'm not liking it so far, and this is why I chose against them. Oh, forget Tice going to the Ukraine. Told me a load about Tice and a load about reform. But forget that, we'll put that to one side. I did a little bit of research. Some of their major funders, some of the people that back them financially, have got hedge fund companies. In a couple of cases, those hedge funds were set up with 50% stakes from George Soros. You do the homework on Soros. And one that I found so far, a hedge fund owned by one of these backers, is backed by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So we know some of their big individual funders, Paul Marshall, who set up his hedge fund company with the help of George Soros. And we know Christopher Chandler, the New Zealand businessman who owns that company, is it Legatum, whose hedge fund has links to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They also fund GB News, which is probably why Tice and Farage basically use it as a party political broadcast, don't they? Now, when Nigel turns around and says, oh, word of mouth, no, it's because you've had hundreds of thousands, if not millions, put into both the party and your main outlet on the television. There's also ex-Bullingdon Club member George Farmer, another hedge fund manager, who has put an awful lot of money into Reform UK. Then an interesting one, this Christopher Harborne got his fingers in a lot of pies, given £10 million to various parties, normally the Conservative Party. Now, he's a major shareholder in this company called Quinitech, and they're into all sorts of things, but they're basically into the arms trade. And it's been alleged, and I've not got time to do the research, that his company, Quinitech, was given a lot of arms deals by the Tory government. Obviously, he's hedging his bets now because he's investing in reform as well. And when I look at that Quinitech and I think of Tice out in the Ukraine, I think to myself, I just wonder if they're hedging their bets. And who is also a shareholder in Quinitech? Yes, BlackRock. BlackRock, who we find everywhere, from all our supermarkets to, as I say, Christopher Harborne's company. And they've already signed up to rebuild the Ukraine via various companies. It goes into trillions, that does. So that's what I'm looking at, and I'm thinking, is this controlled opposition? Call me a cynic. I'm going with yes. I always say, follow the money and the truth will appear. That's why I don't vote for reform. But have a little look, just in case you don't believe me. So that's me, folks. That's reform. Why I don't vote for them. Whilst I respect your views, I have gone to a smaller party. I was looking for a smaller party or an independent that I could trust. I went to the Social Democratic Party and I was not very democratically thrown out because I was once a member of the National Liberal Party, and a couple of the founding members of that party had been ex-National Front members, although they changed their total ethos and thought pattern. After 4 years of being with the Social Democratic Party and actually being accepted as a candidate at the next general election, I was unceremoniously, undemocratically, in my view, thrown out. I still like William Clouston. I still like a lot about the Social Democratic Party. But for me, I went to a party headed by Dr. Tek Kong, the ADF party, the Alliance for Democracy and Freedom, because he was one of those voices that said no mandatory vaccines. He was against lockdowns. He was for full bodily autonomy, and he's never changed. The immigration policy, he's not scared to say, look, we need to get the Navy to intercept these boats and turn them round. Make sure, escort them safely back to France. And when they do get here, they go into detention centres while their future's decided. Either deportation to their country of origin, or if their asylum claim is accepted, then they go on things like houses lists and that sort of thing. But Brits and migrants who have come here legally must get priority. You can't just turn up on someone's shore with no documentation and not be illegal. You are a criminal. They should be treated like that. But making sure they have 3 meals a day, making sure they've got a roof over their head, and making sure they're warm, because that's how you treat other human beings. That's me. I like someone that stands their ground. I like someone, whether you agree with them or disagree with them, they don't flip-flop. And I like people that allow you as a human being to make decisions for yourself. Okay, folks, hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to the channel and please throw the video a like. And yeah, let me know what you think. And let me know why you're voting for reform. Okay, speak to you soon. Thanks for watching.